Chapter 1. The Fall of the Li Family. Li Xian leaned against the balcony railing of his family's penthouse, a glass of expensive champagne in hand. The city lights glittered below him, a sparkling sea of wealth and privilege, his world. At 24 he was the third son of the Li family, known for their empire in luxury real estate. Handsome, effortlessly charming and educated at the best schools, Xian had never known hardship. Why would he? His eldest brother Li Jian ran the company. His second brother Li Min handled investments. And him? He was the face, the one who attended galas, charmed investors and enjoyed the fruits of their labor. His phone buzzed. Another message from his fiancée Lena. Don't forget the charity gala tonight. I already picked out your suit. Xian smirked. Of course she had. Lena loved playing the perfect future Mrs. Li. He took a sip of champagne, unaware that in a few hours his entire life would shatter. The gala was in full swing when the first whispers started. Xian, dressed in a tailored black tuxedo, was laughing with a group of friends when he noticed the strange glances. Then his father's grim face as he pulled Jian aside. Something was wrong. His phone rang. His mother. Xian, come home. Now. The moment he stepped into their mansion he knew. The air was thick with tension. His father sat slumped in his chair, his mother pale-faced. Jian looked like he hadn't slept in days. What happened? Xian demanded. Jian swallowed hard. I miscalculated. A miscalculation. That was how Jian described the financial disaster he had caused. An overseas deal gone wrong, debts called in, assets frozen. The Li Empire was crumbling. Xian's stomach dropped. How bad is it? His father's voice was hollow. We've lost everything. The next few weeks were a nightmare. The family's properties were seized. Bank accounts emptied. Creditors swarmed like vultures. Their name, once respected, was now a joke in high society. Worst of all, Lena returned her engagement ring with a cold message. This isn't what I signed up for. His so-called friends vanished overnight. No more parties, no more favors. He was no longer Li Xian, the untouchable heir. Just another fallen rich boy. His parents made the painful decision to move to their ancestral home in the countryside. You're coming with us, his mother insisted. But Xian refused. No. I'm staying in the city. He had no plan, no money, just pride. The only person who didn't leave him? Bai Xiu. She was the daughter of his childhood nanny, a girl he had grown up with but never truly seen. While everyone else fled, Xiu stood quietly in the doorway of his now empty penthouse, a single suitcase in hand. What are you doing here? Xian snapped, his pride making him harsh. Xiu didn't flinch. You have nowhere to go. I'm coming with you. He wanted to refuse, but the truth was he had no choice. They moved into a cramped, run-down apartment in a part of the city Xian had never set foot in before. The walls were thin, the faucet leaked, and the bed was a far cry from his king-sized mattress. Xiu, ever practical, unpacked silently. Why are you doing this? Xian muttered. She paused, then said simply, because someone has to. Adjusting to poverty was humiliating. Xian had never cooked, never cleaned, never worried about money. But now he had nothing. Xiu took charge. She found a job at a cafe, waking up at dawn to work shifts while Xian wallowed in self-pity. At night she studied, poring over textbooks for her online degree in business management. One evening Xian watched her from the couch, exhausted but still working. Why do you bother? He asked bitterly. Studying won't change anything. Xiu didn't look up. It will for me. Her quiet determination unsettled him. Then he got sick. A fever burned through him, leaving him weak and shivering. He cursed, tossing in bed, too proud to admit he needed help. But Xiu didn't wait for permission. She stayed up all night, pressing cool towels to his forehead, forcing him to drink water, even skipping work to care for him. When he finally woke up lucid, he saw her asleep at his bedside, her head resting on her arms. For the first time in his life, Li Xian felt shame. The next morning, Xian made a decision. He couldn't live like this anymore. Dependent, useless. He grabbed Xiu's wrist as she headed out for work. Teach me, he said. She blinked. What? Teach me how to survive. Xiu studied him for a long moment, then nodded. All right. But you'll have to work harder than you ever have in your life. Xian clenched his jaw. I will. Chapter 2. the only one who stayed. Xian had never held a broom in his life. He stared at the wooden handle like it was some foreign artifact, gripping it awkwardly as Xiu demonstrated the proper way to sweep their tiny apartment. Like this, she said, moving the broom in smooth, even strokes. Not too hard or you'll just spread the dust around. Xian mimicked her movements, but the bristles caught on the uneven floorboards, sending a cloud of dirt into the air. He coughed, waving a hand in front of his face. Xiu sighed. Again. His pride prickled. This is ridiculous. I've negotiated million-dollar deals and now I'm being lectured on sweeping. Xiu didn't back down. Those million-dollar deals didn't teach you how to take care of yourself. He wanted to argue but the truth stung. Xiu worked double shifts at the cafe, leaving before dawn and returning long after dark. Xian, left alone in the apartment, quickly realized how little he knew about survival. The first time he tried to cook he burned the rice. The stove, old and temperamental, hissed at him like a disgruntled beast. Smoke filled the kitchen and Xiu came home to find him fanning the air with a towel, his face smudged with soot. She didn't laugh. She didn't scold. She just rolled up her sleeves and started cleaning. Watch closely, she said, showing him how much water to add, how to adjust the flame. Xian watched her hands, small, calloused, capable. How had he never noticed them before? At night Xiu studied. Their apartment had only one small desk wedged in the corner beside the window. Xian would lie on the couch, pretending not to watch as she hunched over her textbooks, her brow furrowed in concentration. One evening he finally asked, "Why business management?" Xiu didn't look up. "Because knowledge is the one thing no one can take from you." He remembered then, Xiu had always been smart. Smarter than him maybe. When they were children she used to help him with his homework, patiently explaining math problems while he complained. Back then he'd taken it for granted. Now he wondered how much else he'd missed. Xian found a job. Not in an air-conditioned office, not with a fancy title, but as a delivery boy for a local restaurant. The owner, a gruff man with no patience for spoiled rich kids, barely glanced at his resume. "Can you ride a bike?" Xian hesitated. I have a driver's license." The man snorted. "Bike's out back. Don't crash it." The first day was agony. His thighs burned, his palms blistered, and he got lost 3 times. When he finally stumbled back to the apartment, Xiu took one look at him and ran a bath. He wanted to refuse. Wanted to pretend he didn't need help. But the warmth of the water and the quiet way Xiu left a fresh set of clothes by the door undid him. He sank into the tub, exhausted, humbled. Weeks passed. Xian learned. He learned how to budget, how to mend his own clothes, how to haggle at the market. He learned the ache of real work, the kind that left his body sore and his mind too tired for pride. And he learned about Xiu. How she loved jasmine tea but never bought it for herself because it was too expensive. How she hummed under her breath when she thought no one was listening. How her eyes softened when she talked about her dream, opening a small bookstore one day. One night he came home to find her asleep at the desk, her cheek pressed against an open textbook. Carefully he lifted her, so light, so tired, and carried her to bed. She stirred, mumbling, "Xian." "Sleep," he said quietly. "I'll clean up." For the first time he wanted to take care of her. Then the fever hit. Came on suddenly, a dizzy spell at work, a stumble that sent him crashing into a stack of boxes. His boss sent him home early, muttering about useless rich kids. By the time Xian reached the apartment his vision swam. He barely made it to the bed before collapsing. Fire. His body was on fire. Voices drifted in and out. "Burning up." "Medicine, where is?" Cool hands on his forehead. A damp cloth. Someone lifting his head, urging him to drink. Xian forced his eyes open. Xiu's face swam above him, tight with worry. "Stupid," she whispered. "Why didn't you tell me you weren't feeling well?" He wanted to answer but darkness dragged him under. When he woke, sunlight streamed through the window. Xiu was curled in the chair beside the bed, asleep. Her hair was messy, her clothes rumpled. An empty medicine packet and a half-finished cup of tea sat on the nightstand. She'd stayed up all night. For him. Xian's chest ached. Not from the fever but from something else. Something he couldn't name. He reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. Xiu's eyes fluttered open. "You're awake," she murmured, immediately pressing a hand to his forehead. "Fever's gone down." He caught her wrist. You skipped work. He shrugged. They'll understand. No one had ever put him first like this. Not his family, not his friends, certainly not Lena. Only Xiu. Only ever Xiu. That night, Xian made a decision. He waited until Xiu left for her late shift, then pulled out the last of his hidden savings. An emergency fund he'd kept secret, tucked into the lining of his old wallet. It wasn't much, but it was enough for a start. When Xiu returned, exhausted, she found the apartment spotless. Dinner, actual edible dinner, waited on the table. And Xian standing awkwardly beside it holding a small box. Inside was a tin of jasmine tea. Xiu stared at it, then at him. What's this? Xian swallowed. I thank you. For everything. Her eyes glistened. For a terrifying moment he thought she might cry. Then she smiled, small, real, breathtaking. Idiot, she said softly. You're learning. Chapter 3. A New Beginning. Xian counted the bills hidden beneath his mattress for the third time. Not enough. His emergency fund, once meant for frivolous luxuries, was now his only hope. It wouldn't last long, but if he was careful it could be a start. He glanced at the door, listening for Xiu's footsteps. She'd taken on extra shifts at the cafe, leaving before sunrise and returning long after dark. The dark circles under her eyes haunted him. She's killing herself for me. The thought twisted in his chest. He tucked the money into his pocket and slipped out. The fabric market was alive with noise. Vendors shouting, carts rattling, the scent of dye and sweat thick in the air. Xian moved through the crowd, his old negotiation skills flickering to life. He stopped at a stall piled high with silk remnants. This one, he said, pointing to a bolt of deep blue fabric. How much for the whole roll? The vendor eyed him. A rich boy playing at business. Too expensive for you. Xian clenched his jaw. Try me. An hour later he walked away with his first investment. Discounted high-quality silk, imperfect but salvageable. Now he just needed a buyer. Xiu noticed. Of course she did. You've been gone a lot, she said one evening, stirring a pot of congee. Her voice was casual but her shoulders were tense. Xian hesitated. He wanted to tell her, I'm fixing this, I'm going to make it right. But shame choked the words. What if he failed? What if he proved himself just as useless as everyone thought? Just looking for better work, he muttered. Xiu's spoon stilled. She didn't press. The silence between them grew heavier. His first sale was to a boutique owner, a woman who recognized quality even in flawed fabric. You're new at this, she said, counting out cash. Xian nodded. She smirked. But you've got potential. The money in his hand felt like redemption. That night he nearly told Xiu. He imagined her smile, the way her eyes would light up. You did it, you actually did it. But then he saw her hands. Red, raw from scrubbing dishes at the cafe. Not yet. He tucked the earnings away. Xiu collapsed. One moment she was stacking textbooks, the next her knees buckled. Xian caught her just before she hit the floor. Xiu. Her skin was fever hot. She'd been working double shifts, studying all night, skipping meals to save money. For him, guilt was a knife in his ribs. He carried her to bed, pressing a cold cloth to her forehead. You idiot, he whispered, voice cracking. Why won't you stop? Xiu's fingers weakly curled around his wrist. Someone has to take care of you. The words shattered him. The next morning Xian made congee for the first time without burning it. Xiu blinked when he brought it to her. You cooked. Eat, he ordered, gruffer than intended. She took a hesitant bite. Then another. A small, surprised smile tugged at her lips. It's good. Xian's throat tightened. He'd spent years dining at Michelin-starred restaurants and this simple praise, meant more than all of it. He cleared his throat. I've been saving money. I'm starting a business. Xiu froze. You've what? The fight was inevitable. You lied to me? Xiu's voice trembled. All this time I've been working myself to the bone and you had money? Xian flinched. It wasn't enough. Not to fix everything, not to... To what? To matter. She shoved at his chest. Did you think I'd mock you for trying? I thought I'd fail. The admission burst out of him. And you'd finally see how worthless I really am. Xiu's anger faltered. Xian turned away, fists clenched. I just wanted to do something right. For once. Silence. Then, a touch on his arm. Light hesitant. Show me, Xiu whispered. He did. Led her to the closet where he'd hidden his samples, his ledgers, his plans. Xiu traced the fabric with careful fingers. This is really good. Xian exhaled shakily. Yeah. She met his eyes. Yeah. And just like that, the weight lifted. Xiu reached into her bag, pulling out a worn notebook. I've been working on something too. Inside were pages of business strategies, market trends, supplier contacts, everything she'd been studying for. Xian stared. You for me. Xiu's cheeks pinked. I thought, maybe one day you'd want it. He couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. So he pulled her into his arms instead. Xiu stiffened, then melted against him, her face buried in his shoulder. Together, she mumbled. Xian held her tighter. Together. Chapter 4. Success and Realization. Their first major order came from an unexpected source. A high-end fashion boutique in the city's shopping district. Xian stared at the email on his phone, the numbers blurring before his eyes. 50,000 yuan. More money than he'd seen in over a year. We did it, he whispered. Xiu curled up beside him on their battered couch, lifted her head from his shoulder. He turned the screen toward her. They want our entire stock. For a moment Xiu didn't react. Then her face transformed, eyes widening, lips parting in disbelief. A second later she launched herself at him, arms wrapping around his neck. Xian. Xian. He caught her instinctively, her warmth pressing against him, her laughter vibrating through his chest. The sheer force of her joy knocked the breath from his lungs. Then just as suddenly she pulled back, cheeks flushed. Sorry, Xian caught her wrist before she could retreat. Don't. Her pulse fluttered beneath his fingers. The money changed everything. They moved out of their cramped apartment into a modest but clean 2-bedroom unit. Xiu quit her job at the cafe, devoting herself fully to their business, though she still studied late into the night, determined to finish her degree. Xian, for his part, threw himself into expansion. He negotiated with suppliers, secured contracts, even hired their first employee, a quiet young man named Tao who had a knack for numbers. But late at night, when the spreadsheets blurred before his eyes, Xian found himself watching Xiu instead. The way she bit her lip when concentrating. The way her hair slipped from its ponytail as she worked. The way she absent-mindedly hummed that same little tune. Something from their childhood, he realized. She's always been here. The thought settled in his chest, heavy and undeniable. Then came the exhaustion. Xian noticed it first in the shadows under Xiu's eyes, the way she sometimes swayed on her feet. She pushed herself harder than anyone he'd ever known. Handling orders, managing inventory, still attending night classes. One evening, he returned from a meeting to find her asleep at her desk, cheek pressed against an open textbook. Gently, he brushed the hair from her face. She didn't stir. Xian's throat tightened. Without thinking, he slid one arm beneath her knees, the other around her back, and lifted her. Xiu murmured something unintelligible, nestling against his chest. His heart hammered as he carried her to bed, tucking the blankets around her with trembling hands. Rest, he whispered. For the first time he allowed himself to imagine a future where he could give her everything she deserved. Their first anniversary of starting the business arrived unnoticed by everyone but Xian. He stood in the jewelry district, staring at a display case. The ring was simple, white gold with a single pearl. Not flashy, not expensive by his old standards, but, sir. The saleswoman smiled. For someone special? Xian's fingers tightened around his wallet. Yes. He spent nearly their entire month's profit on it. Xiu found the box that night. What's this? She asked, holding up the small velvet case he'd left on her desk. Xian's mouth went dry. Open it. Her hands shook as she lifted the lid. When she saw the ring, her breath caught. Xian. It's not, he swallowed. It's not what you think. Not yet. But I wanted you to have it. To know that. That I see you. That I'll never stop seeing you. Xiu lifted the ring, sunlight catching the pearl. Tears welled in her eyes. It's too much, she whispered. Xian stepped closer. It's not enough. The space between them crackled. Then Xiu slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. That night, Xian dreamed of his parents' mansion. In the dream, he stood in the grand foyer, everything restored to its former glory. His father smiled. His mother embraced him. But when he turned, Xiu was gone. He woke in a cold sweat, heart pounding. The apartment was silent save for Xiu's soft breathing from the next room. Xian pressed his palms to his eyes. I can't lose her. The next morning, Xian made a decision. We're buying back my family's house, he announced over breakfast. Xiu froze, her chopsticks hovering mid-air. What? I have the money now. It's time. A strange expression crossed Xiu's face, something between pride and sorrow. That's wonderful, Xian. But her voice lacked its usual warmth. Later, when Xian returned from finalizing the deal, he found the pearl ring sitting on his pillow. No note. Just the quiet, devastating absence of the woman who had saved him in every way that mattered. Chapter 5. The Empty House. The Li mansion no longer smelled like home. Xian stood in the grand foyer, sunlight streaming through the restored stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across the marble floors. Everything was exactly as he remembered. The sweeping staircase, the crystal chandeliers, the oil portraits of his ancestors lining the walls. Yet the air felt hollow. His mother wept as she touched the familiar furniture, now returned to its rightful place. His father clasped his shoulder with trembling pride. You did this, son. Xian forced a smile. All he could think about was the tiny apartment where Xiu had once hummed while making tea. He found the ring first. The pearl gleamed accusingly from his nightstand where he'd placed it after finding it on his pillow. He picked it up, rolling it between his fingers. Why did she leave it? The obvious answer stabbed through him. She didn't want it, but something deeper nagged at him. Xiu wasn't cruel. If she meant to reject him, she would have said so. Which meant he bolted upright. She thought he was rejecting her. The university registrar's office had no record of Bai Xiu. Withdrawn 2 weeks ago, the clerk said, barely glancing up from her computer. Xian's stomach dropped. Did she say why? Financial reasons, I believe. Financial reasons. The words burned. Xiu had poured every penny into their business, their future, while quietly sacrificing her own dreams. And he'd been too blind to see it. Her old roommate answered on the third knock. The girl took one look at Xian's face and sighed. She went back to her hometown. Said something about helping at her mother's bakery. Xian's breath caught. Xiu had mentioned that bakery exactly once. A tiny shop in a coastal village where she'd spent summers dusted in flour. Where? His voice cracked. Where exactly is that? The girl hesitated. You're really going after her? Xian didn't blink. Try and stop me. The train ride took 6 hours. Xian stared out the window as cityscapes melted into rolling hills, then finally to the glittering coastline. With each mile, his pulse hammered louder. What would he even say? I was an idiot? You're the only thing that's ever felt real to me? The words tangled in his throat, inadequate. The bakery smelled like heaven. Warm sugar, yeast, and something distinctly Xiu. Maybe the jasmine tea she always carried in her bag. Xian stood frozen in the doorway, watching her knead dough behind the counter. She looked different. Hair tied in a messy bun, flour smudged on her cheek, wearing a simple apron instead of her usual business attire. More beautiful than ever. The bell jingled as he stepped inside. Xiu glanced up and dropped the rolling pin. For a heartbeat they just stared. Then Xian reached into his pocket and placed the pearl ring on the counter between them. This belongs to you, he said quietly. Xiu's lips parted. Xian. I bought back the wrong home. His voice broke. You were my home all along. Silence. A tear traced down Xiu's flour-dusted cheek. You idiot. Xian's heart stopped. She wiped her hands on her apron, picked up the ring, and slipped it back onto her finger. You couldn't have figured that out before I left? The relief nearly buckled his knees. He rounded the counter in 2 strides, crushing her to his chest. Xiu clung to him, her laughter muffled against his shoulder. I'm sorry, he whispered into her hair. For everything. Xiu pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. Prove it. And so he did, with a kiss that tasted of salt and sugar and second chances. They returned to the city a week later. Not to the mansion but to their old neighborhood, to a new apartment above the bakery they now owned together. Xiu's mother had handed over the keys with knowing eyes. Take care of each other. That night, as Xian lay tangled in sheets that smelled like jasmine and fresh bread, Xiu traced the calluses on his palms, marks from 3 years of rebuilding his life. "You kept the ring," he murmured. Xiu smiled against his chest. "I was always yours." Outside, the city lights glittered. But Xian only had eyes for the woman in his arms. His shelter, his compass, his truest home. Chapter 6. A Love Earned. The bakery door chimed and Xian looked up from inventory spreadsheets, only to freeze. Lena stood in the doorway. His ex-fiancée looked as polished as ever in a designer dress, her manicured fingers tapping the glass display case. "I heard you were back in town." Xian's grip tightened on his pen. "What do you want?" Lena's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Can't an old friend check in?" Behind him, the kitchen door swung open. Xiu emerged with a tray of fresh pastries, her smile fading when she saw their visitor. Xian moved instinctively, stepping between them. Lena's gaze flicked to Xiu's flour-dusted apron, then to the pearl ring on her finger. "How quaint." Xiu set the tray down with deliberate calm. "We're closing early." The confrontation left a bitter aftertaste. Xian paced their apartment that night while Xiu studied at the kitchen table, her textbooks spread between bread recipes. "She wanted investors for her new boutique," he growled. "As if I'd." "Xian." Xiu's quiet voice stopped him mid-step. "It doesn't matter." But it did. Because Lena's smirk had stirred something ugly in his chest. The old shame of being the fallen rich boy, the unspoken judgment that he'd settled for less. Xiu marked a passage in her textbook. "I have an interview tomorrow." The abrupt subject change startled him. "Interview?" "With Yang and Associates. They're recruiting bilingual business consultants." Xian's stomach dropped. Yang and Associates was an international firm. Their consultants traveled constantly. Xiu finally met his gaze. "In Singapore." The silence that night was deafening. Xian lay awake, staring at the ceiling while Xiu slept curled against him. Her interview clothes were already laid out, a crisp blazer he'd never seen before. Singapore. He'd known this was coming. Xiu had been acing her courses, her professors whispering about big potential. But knowing and facing it were different things. Xiu stirred in her sleep, her hand seeking his. Xian laced their fingers together, memorizing the feel of her calluses against his palm. What right did he have to hold her back? The interview lasted 3 hours. Xian burned 3 batches of almond cookies waiting. When Xiu finally returned, her face gave nothing away. "Well." She set her bag down carefully. "They offered me the position." Xian's throat tightened. "That's amazing." Xiu studied him. "It's a 2-year contract. Mostly overseas." The numbers punched through him. 730 days, 17,520 hours. But he forced a smile. "You should take it." Xiu's eyes narrowed. "Just like that. What, you want me to beg?" The joke fell flat. Xiu turned away, shoulders stiff. "I'll think about it." The tension built like a thunderstorm. Xian threw himself into work, expanding their catering services. Xiu buried herself in case studies, practicing presentations late into the night. They moved around each other like ghosts, polite, careful, aching. It came to a head one rainy afternoon when Xian found her staring at the acceptance letter. "Take the job, Xiu." She whirled on him. "Why are you so eager to get rid of me?" Xian flinched. "I'm not." "Then fight for me." Her voice cracked. "Just once, Xian, fight for what you want." The words hung between them, raw and bleeding. Xian reached for her, then froze when his phone buzzed. A notification from the bank. His parents had transferred funds. "For the wedding, read the attached note." Xiu laughed. A broken, awful sound. "Wedding?" Xian's stomach dropped. "That's not, I never." "You didn't even ask." Her whisper cut deeper than any shout. The truth slammed into him. He'd been so afraid of losing her that he'd never considered she might want to be chosen. Not out of obligation, not as a consolation prize, but as someone worth risking everything for. Xiu wiped her eyes with shaking hands. "I need air." The door clicked shut behind her. Xian found her at the train platform. Xiu stood with a single suitcase, her posture rigid. She didn't turn when he approached. "I bought a ticket," she said dully. Xian's heart pounded. "To Singapore?" "To think." The announcement system crackled. Final boarding call. Xian reached into his pocket and pulled out 2 tickets. One to Singapore, one back. Take these instead. Xiu finally looked at him. If you go, he said, voice rough, I go with you. If you stay, I stay. But wherever you are, Xiu, that's where I belong. Her breath hitched. What about the bakery? Your family? I'll commute. We'll figure it out. He cupped her face. Just, don't ask me to live without you again. The train whistled. Xiu let out a shuddering breath and took his hand. They missed the train. Not because Xiu hesitated, but because Xian kissed her right there on the platform, pouring 3 years of unsaid words into the press of his lips. Later, as they walked back through the rain, Xiu nudged him. You realize this means you actually have to propose properly now. Xian grinned. I was thinking on the Singapore flyer. Show off. But her fingers tightened around his, and for the first time in weeks, the future didn't feel like something to fear. Chapter 7. The Promise. Singapore smelled like salt and ambition. Xian stood at their new apartment window, watching cargo ships creep across the harbor while Xiu rattled off her schedule for the week. Client briefing at 8, then the airport for the Jakarta trip. His fingers tightened around his coffee cup. Jakarta. 3 days. Their first separation since arriving. Xiu paused mid-sentence, her tablet clutched to her chest. You're not listening. I am, he lied. She arched an eyebrow, the look that always saw straight through him. Xian set down his cup. It's just, you're already leaving. Xiu's expression softened. She crossed the room, her stockinged feet silent on the polished floors, and pressed a hand to his cheek. It's 3 days. You'll survive. He turned his face into her palm, breathing in the familiar scent of her jasmine hand cream. That was the problem. He wasn't sure he would. The bakery back home flourished under Tao's management. Xian monitored the accounts daily, video called the staff weekly, and still felt like a stranger in his own life. At night, he traced the lines of Xiu's back as she slept, memorizing the new freckles from Singapore's sun. She worked harder than ever, coming home with smudged mascara and triumph in her eyes, full of stories about boardroom negotiations and international clients. He loved her like this. He just didn't know where he fit anymore. His mother's call came during Xiu's Jakarta trip. Have you set a date yet? Xian pinched the bridge of his nose. We've been busy. Your father found an auspicious day in October. The unspoken criticism hung between them. Real Lees don't postpone weddings for careers. Especially not their wives. Xian stared at the empty side of the bed. We'll discuss it when Xiu returns. His mother sighed. Don't let her forget her place, Xian. The words curdled in his stomach long after the call ended. Xiu returned with a sunburn and news. They want to extend my contract. She bounced on the mattress, still in her travel-wrinkled blouse. With a promotion. Xian forced a smile. That's great. Xiu's excitement dimmed. You don't mean that. I do. It's just. He gestured helplessly at his laptop, open to bakery spreadsheets. What does this mean for us? Xiu stilled. Us. Are we staying? Going back? Because I can't keep living in limbo, Xiu. The moment the words left his mouth, he regretted them. Xiu's face shuddered. I see. She retreated to the shower without another word. The fight came at 2 a.m. You knew this was temporary. Xiu's whisper cut through the dark. Xian sat up. I knew no such thing. You bought return tickets. Because I thought you'd want options. He raked a hand through his hair. But you've already decided, haven't you? Without even talking to me. Xiu's eyes glittered in the city light filtering through the blinds. You want me to choose? Fine. I choose the job. The words landed like a physical blow. Xian swallowed hard. Then go. Morning brought silence and an empty closet. Xiu had left for an early meeting, or perhaps she just couldn't stand to look at him. Xian wouldn't blame her. He stared at the half-packed suitcase on their bed. His or hers? He wasn't sure. His phone buzzed. A message from Tao. Problem with the supplier. Need you to call. Home needed him. Xiu didn't. The airport was crowded. Xian stood at the departures board, ticket in hand, when his phone rang. Xiu's name flashed on the screen. He hesitated. Then answered. Where are you? Her voice was raw. Tai. Flight leaves in an hour. A shaky breath. I turned down the extension. Xian's pulse roared in his ears. What? I told them I had a prior commitment. A watery laugh. Turns out I'm getting married in October. The world tilted. Xiu. Come home, Xian. Our home. He was already running for the exit. He found her at their favorite hawker stand, still in her work clothes, 2 bowls of laksa steaming between them. Xian dropped into the seat opposite her. You gave up your promotion. Xiu pushed a bowl toward him. I chose us. But you love the job. I love you more. She met his gaze squarely. But Xian, this can't keep happening. I need to know you'll fight for me as hard as I fight for you. The truth settled over him like dawn breaking. Xian reached across the table, linking their fingers. From now on we decide everything together. No more running. No more sacrifices. Xiu squeezed his hand. Promise. On my life. And for the first time in months the future felt like something they would face, side by side. Chapter 8. Always You. The wedding planner's binder thumped onto the table, pages bursting with fabric swatches and floral samples. Traditional red silk for the bride, Mrs. Li announced, tapping a manicured nail on the most expensive option. Gold embroidery, of course. Across the sitting room, Xiu's fingers stilled around her teacup. Xian saw the tension in her shoulders, the same way he saw the way her gaze kept drifting to the simple ivory design hidden beneath the stack. The one they'd picked together. His mother continued, oblivious. The banquet will be at the Grand Imperial. 500 guests minimum. Xiu's cup clinked against its saucer. Xian cleared his throat. Actually, Xiu interrupted softly, we were thinking something smaller. The room went quiet. The argument lasted hours after his parents left. You embarrassed them, Xian said, pacing their bedroom. Xiu yanked pins from her hair, the strands tumbling down her back. They embarrassed me. They're trying to welcome you into the family. By erasing everything I want? She whirled on him. Tell me the truth, Xian. Is this your wedding or theirs? The question hung between them, heavy as the pearl ring on her finger. Xian opened his mouth and his phone rang. Lena's name flashed on the screen. Xiu's eyes hardened. You should get that. Lena wanted to meet. Just coffee, she said over the phone, her voice light. I have a business proposition. Xian almost refused until she added, it's about Xiu. The cafe was too bright, too loud. Lena sat waiting, impeccable in cream silk. You look terrible, she observed, stirring her latte. Xian didn't sit. What do you want? Lena sighed. Yang and Associates is my client. I heard about Xiu turning down the promotion. She pushed an envelope across the table. They're willing to reinstate it. No hard feelings. Xian stared at the embossed letterhead. Why would you do this? Lena's smile didn't reach her eyes. Because she'll always resent you if she stays. Xian found Xiu in the bakery kitchen, kneading dough with furious intensity. Flour dusted her eyelashes like snow. He set the envelope on the counter. Lena gave me this. Xiu didn't look up. Of course she did. It's your promotion. They want you back. Her hands stilled. Xian forced the next words out. If you want to take it, I'll go with you. Xiu finally met his gaze. And the wedding? We'll figure it out. For a long moment she just stared at him. Then, you still don't get it. She wiped her hands on her apron, leaving streaks of flour. I don't want the promotion if it means we lose ourselves. Xian's breath caught. Xiu stepped closer. I chose you, Xian. Not Singapore, not some job. Now tell me, who are you choosing? The answer came easier than he expected. Xian cancelled the Grand Imperial. He ignored his mother's outraged calls, his father's disappointed texts. Instead he booked a small seaside venue, the same stretch of shore where Xiu had learned to swim as a child. When he showed her the reservation, her eyes welled with tears. You remembered, she whispered. Xian kissed her flour-dusted forehead. I remember everything. Disaster struck 3 days before the ceremony. A typhoon warning flashed across the weather reports, promising torrential rains. The venue called, they couldn't guarantee safety. Xian found Xiu staring at the storm radar, her lower lip trembling. His parents pounced immediately. See, his mother tooted over speakerphone. This is why we use proper venues. Come home, we'll arrange. Xian hung up. Then he grabbed Xiu's hand and pulled her into the rain. They married in the bakery. Tao strung fairy lights between bread racks. Xiu's mother baked a simple lemon cake. The storm raged outside, but inside. Inside, Xiu glowed in ivory silk, her hair crowned with jasmine flowers. When it came time for vows, Xian forgot every practiced word. "You were my shelter," he said instead, voice rough. "Let me be yours." Xiu's answering smile outshone every chandelier in his family's mansion. The typhoon passed by morning. Sunlight streamed through the bakery windows, gilding the flowers still dusting the floors. Xiu lay curled against Xian's chest, their wedding clothes strewn across the proofing table. "You realize your parents will never forgive us," she murmured. Xian pressed a kiss to her bare shoulder. "They will. How can you be sure?" He thought of the email he'd sent before dawn, resigning from the family board, transferring his shares to his brothers. "Because I finally learned the difference between what I was given," he said, tightening his arms around her, "and what I earned." Xiu turned in his embrace, her pearl ring glinting between them. "And what did you earn?" Xian kissed her slowly, sweetly. "You." Chapter 9. The Storm Before the Calm. The bakery door slammed open with a gust of wind and rain. Xiu looked up from frosting a wedding cake, her wedding cake, to see Xian drenched and breathless, his white dress shirt plastered to his chest. "They cancelled the beach venue," he panted, rainwater dripping from his hair onto the floor. Tao, ever the pragmatist, immediately threw a towel at his head. "Typhoons upgraded to Category 3. Xiu's piping bag slipped from her fingers, ruining a delicate sugar flower. 3 days. They had 3 days before. Her phone buzzed. Mrs. Li's name flashed on the screen. Xian caught her wrist before she could answer. "Don't." "But I have an idea." His eyes burned with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine, and not from the cold. Xiu had never seen Xian like this. He moved through the storm-lashed streets like a man possessed, dragging her from one location to another. A community hall, too sterile. A botanical garden conservatory, too humid. Even an art gallery, that one's just pretentious. When they finally stumbled back into the bakery, soaked to the skin, Xiu lost her temper. "This is ridiculous. We'll just postpone." "No." Xian's voice cut through hers like steel. "We're getting married on Saturday. Even if..." His gaze swept over the flour-dusted counters, the mismatched chairs, the oven that sometimes smoked. Xiu's breath caught. "Here." Xian reached for her flour-dusted hands. "Where else?" Chaos ensued. Tao took over customer cancellations while Xiu's mother commandeered the kitchen. Xian spent hours on the phone, his expression growing darker with each call, until he finally threw his phone across the room. "Father froze our accounts." Xiu dropped the garland she was weaving. "What?" "He says if we want to play poppers, we can do it properly." Xian's laugh was razor-sharp. "As if I haven't been living on my own earnings for years." Xiu watched his throat work as he swallowed, the only sign of how much it hurt. Without a word, she pulled their shared savings tin from under the counter. Xian stared at the modest stack of bills. "This is your bookstore fund." Xiu kissed his cheek. "Now it's our life fund." The storm raged outside as Xiu slipped into her dress. A simple ivory gown with a neckline embroidered with tiny pearls. Not the traditional red his mother had chosen. Hers. When she emerged, Xian's breath audibly caught. "You." His voice broke. "You're. Don't cry, you'll ruin your shirt." Xiu smoothed his lapels, her own eyes suspiciously damp. Tao cleared his throat. "We have a problem. The power went out. Candlelight." That's how they married, surrounded by flickering votives and hurricane lamps, the scent of vanilla and bread dough thick in the air. Xiu's mother played the violin off-key. Tao officiated with Wikipedia open on his phone. When it came time for vows, Xian didn't recite the flowery words they'd prepared. "You were my shelter," he said instead, his voice raw in the quiet. "Let me be yours." Xiu's carefully crafted vows dissolved into one choked sentence. "Always." Then the storm outside reached its crescendo, and the roof leaked right onto the cake. They ate soggy cake with their fingers by candlelight, laughing until their sides ached. Xiu licked frosting from Xian's thumb, then froze when he suddenly went still. "What?" Xian's eyes burned in the dim light. I want to show you something. He led her to the back office, their makeshift bridal suite, where a single candle illuminated a small box on the desk. Not the pearl ring she still wore, but something new. Inside lay a key. To the storefront next door, Xian said, watching her face. For your bookstore. Xiu's vision blurred. But, the savings. I've been setting aside profits for months. He pressed his forehead to hers. You gave up your dreams for me too many times. The storm outside faded to a hush as Xiu kissed him. Slow, sweet, and full of promise. Morning brought stillness. Sunlight streamed through the bakery windows, gilding the wreckage of their wedding. Toppled candles, water-stained decorations, and Xian's dress shirt draped over a bread rack. Xiu stretched beneath the blanket they'd spread on the office floor, studying her husband's sleeping face. Husband. The word sent a thrill through her. Xian's eyes fluttered open. Why are you smiling? You called me your shelter. She traced his jaw. But you were mine first. Outside, the city began to wake, but for once they had nowhere to be but here. The letter arrived at noon. Xian recognized his father's stationery immediately. He expected demands, recriminations, not the single line written in shaky calligraphy. Come home when you're ready. Xiu squeezed his hand. Do you want to go? Xian looked around at their flower-dusted haven, at the key to her dreams gleaming on the desk, at the woman who'd fought for him when he couldn't fight for himself. I am home.